Hello everyone, this is Dr. Muhammad Imran. In the subject World Englishes, today we'll discuss categorizing World Englishes. The term World Englishes refer to the plurality of English language. So it means we don't have a single English today, but there are so many varieties of English language. That's why we call it World Englishes, not World English. So different scholars and different applied linguists categorize these varieties differently. Okay, but they are almost the same. Only approaches are different. In this lecture, we will discuss how these scholars or how these applied linguists categorize World Englishes and how they have given different models for the World Englishes. Let's begin and learn our today's lecture. Categorizing World Englishes. A range of different labels has come to refer to Englishes around the world. So there are different labels and they refer to Englishes around the world, right? Because we don't have a single English. So the following three terms, however, have more precise implications. Okay, the first one is some scholars use new varieties of English, or they also call it indigenized or extraterritorial varieties of English. So this is the first term. Some scholars, some applied linguists, okay, they refer to World Englishes or they put label what as new varieties of English, okay, new varieties of English language, or they also call it indigenized or extraterritorial varieties of English. This is the first label. And the second, that is the most precise and most common, which I did not write here, okay, but let me tell you orally. That is World Englishes, okay. Some applied linguists or some linguists, some scholars, they label this variety as World Englishes. And the third one, that is post-colonial Englishes. So we have new Englishes, we have World Englishes, and we have post-colonial Englishes. We will discuss these three one by one. Now, World Englishes. World Englishes is the most encompassing of all. How can we say that encompassing? Because it includes all varieties of English, whether they are spoken inside a native country or outside of a native country. Fine? Denoting all or any of the varieties spoken around the world. Like for example, there are so many varieties of English language which are spoken inside Great Britain, right? And there are so many varieties of English which are spoken outside of Great Britain. So the varieties which are spoken inside Great Britain or the varieties which are spoken outside of Great Britain, all of them are referred to World Englishes. So that's why we say that World English is encompassing all. Fine. See here, varieties spoken around the world, including British English and of course forms such as Nigerian, Malaysian or New Zealand English. So if that is the variety of English spoken in New Zealand English or Malaysian English or Nigerian English, or the varieties of English spoken inside Great Britain, so all of them we can say all of them refer to World Englishes or they are labeled as World Englishes. Now the second one, New Englishes, coined by Plate Weber and Ho 1984 is explicitly restricted to the newly grown second language varieties, especially of Africa and Asia, like Tanzanians or Indian English. So here in the new Englishes, they exclude the varieties which are spoken inside Great Britain. Fine. Only those varieties of English which are spoken outside of Great Britain. And particularly that here English is learned or English is acquired as a second language. So how can we differentiate between New English and World Englishes? World Englishes include all varieties, whether they are spoken inside native country or outside, while New Englishes only include those varieties of English which are spoken outside of the territory of native countries, and where English is spoken only as a second language. But here, English as a second language and English as a native language in World Englishes. And here, in New Englishes, English is only as a second language, not a native language. Fine. So New Englishes refer to varieties of English language that have emerged and evolved in region where English is not the native language. If you are speaking English in Pakistan, in India, in Nigeria, right, or in Bangladesh, or in some African countries, so that is not the native language of these countries. Fine. So these areas where English is not the native language but has been adopted as a second language. So in Pakistan, English is adopted as a second language. In India, as a second language. In Bangladesh, as a second language. Okay, and in Nigeria, is a second language. In Singapore, is a second language, not as a native language. So this refers to New Englishes, not World Englishes. Fine. So these varieties of English often develop unique features in vocabulary because in this country English is spoken as a second language. So they adopt unique features of vocabulary. Localized terms are used in English, and pronunciation, there will be local touch of pronunciation, grammar and usage influenced by the linguistic cultures and social context of the region where they are spoken. So if English is spoken in Pakistan as a second language, so it will be influenced by the native languages of the people of Urdu language, Punjabi language, Sindhi language, Pashto language. If it is spoken in India, so it will be influenced by the culture of India, the culture of Bangladesh. So there will be a local touch in pronunciation, in grammar and usage. Right? Because English is not the native language of these countries. Let's talk about the third category. Post-colonial Englishes, used predominantly in gender, unites all the variety which have sheer origin mostly in British colonization activities, emphasizing this historical origins and the process which have resulted from it. So it excludes British English but includes American or Australian English, the New Englishes and the English related Creole. Now, in post-colonial Englishes, we can say they have shared origin. How shared origin? Because those countries which were colonized by Great Britain, in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in some African states, Nigeria, okay, Malaysia, or Singapore. So here English has the same origin, or these Englishes, they share some common feature. So they exclude which English? British English, but includes American and Australian English, because America was also a colony of Great Britain in 18th century. Similarly, that Australia was also a colony of Great Britain. Even though now in these days English is spoken as a native language of America and Australia, right? They have native speakers. But again, we can say that America and Australia were also the colonies of Great Britain. So in these all countries, English had the same origin. That's why only British is excluded here. But all they are in. So there is what? American English, Australian English, and the new Englishes. Pakistan, you see India, Nigeria, Bangladesh, and America and Australia. While if we talk about the new English, so here America is also included, American English, and Australian English is also, because these are the native countries of English language. And here in the world Englishes, whether you're native or you're non-native, all varieties, world Englishes encompasses all varieties. New English only include those varieties which are spoken outside of the native countries. And post-colonial, only British is excluded, while America, Australia, New Englishes all are included in this category. So these are the three major category, or we can categorize English in these three labels. We can have three labels: New Englishes, World Englishes, and Post-colonial Englishes. Now, based on these three categories of English language, we have three models, or three models are developed based on these categorization of English language. Three models of world Englishes. First was introduced by Barbara Strange model, 1970. It includes English as a native language, English as a second language, and English as a foreign language. And we have then Shander, 2003, spelling is wrong. Okay, on the next slide we have correct spelling of Shander. And then this is dynamic model. And then we have Braj Kachru model, 1992, and it consists of three circles: inner circle, outer circle, or expanding circle. So we will discuss one by one these models in detail now. First, we talk about this Strange model. The spelling R is missing here. Strange model. The first one categorizes countries in which English is spoken into three types. English as a native language. So this model, it talks about, or it categorizes countries in which English is spoken in three types. So in some countries, English is used as a native language. For example, in UK, in America, in Australia, in New Zealand, and in Canada. So there English is spoken as a native language. The second category in this Strange model, English as a second language. For example, in Pakistan, in India, in Nigeria, in Bangladesh, in Malaysia, and so on. Here English is spoken as a second language in these countries. And English as a foreign language, like for example in China, in Japan, right? In Russia. So in these countries, English is spoken as a foreign language. So this model, it includes countries where English is spoken in different levels. Fine? Native language, second language, and foreign language. Next we have Kachru model. Now concentric circle. There are three circles of this model. Let's discuss. In terms of membership and definition, they largely correlate with the earlier scheme with English as a native language and appearing as the inner circle, English as a second language being conceptualized as outer circle, and English as a foreign language being the expanding circle. So the terms, okay, this model is related with the Strange model. but it is a different one. How it is different, we'll discuss now. So in Strange model, he uses English as a native language. Kechru uses English, he uses inner circle of English. Strange use English as a second language. Kechru use outer circle of English. Strange use English as a foreign language. And Kechru use expanding circle of English language. So there is more going on than just relabeling. However, English as a native language, English as a second language, English as a foreign language scheme may be conceptually clear cut, but it is probably a bit dry and unappealing. Which one? The Strange model. Kechru's line of thinking aids a socio-political and developmental component. Note that being in or out aren't just neutral terms, and expanding implies a process of growth and a whole new agenda for research and generating awareness of issues. So, Kechru says English does not belong to any nation, any country. That's why that instead of English as a second language, if you are saying English as a second language, it means that English belongs to someone. And if you are saying that outer circle of English, so you mean that English does not belong to someone. We have only native speaker and we have only non-native speaker of English. Fine, but he is using outer circle and he is using expanding circle. Expanding means that English is being English is growing in some countries. It is being developed in some countries. Okay, let's discuss more. Kechru and his followers challenge the implicit predominance of the inner circle because a Strange model says English belongs to Great Britain, English belongs to America, English belongs to Australia, English belongs to New Zealand, or English belongs to Canada. But Kechru says, no, not at all, and emphasize the independence and practical importance of outer circle. He says that English outer circle has also a practical, you can say that a practical importance. Or he does what? He gave a kind of independent to English language in the form of outer circle and also expanding circle. So they argue that English belongs to all those who use it. So there is no need to slavishly strive for a British model of usage and pronunciation and view the outer circle countries as developing norm of their own. So he says that it's not important that we have inner circle and we have to follow the pronunciation pattern of Great Britain or the grammatical structure of Great Britain or the accent of... No, it's not important. In outer circle, you have your own pronunciation, you have your own grammatical structure, you have your own localized vocabulary in English where they are required. So English does not belong to any nation, but it is the language of all people wherever it is spoken. So he talks about what? The socio-political and developmental component of English, right? English as an outer circle and English as an expanding circle, not just as a foreign or second language. Now, Schneider model, the third model, the dynamic model of world Englishes was proposed by linguist Edgar W. Sanders in his book Postcolonial English, Varieties Around the World. Now, Sanders' model emphasized the dynamic and evolving nature of English as a global language and particularly in post-colonial context. Here are key features of the dynamic model. So we will discuss some of the key features of this dynamic model which is given by Sanders. Now, stages of development in Schneider model. Now, the dynamic models identifies three stages in the development of world Englishes. First, foundation stage. English is introduced to a region through colonization, trade, or other historical processes. For example, how English was introduced in Indian subcontinent. That was through trade. Later on, India was made the colony of Great Britain. So here English is introduced in the first stage. What happens in the second stage? Now, axonomative stabilization. English becomes established as a second language. In the second stage, English stabilize, or English become the second, it is used as a second language with adherence to norms established by native speakers. And the norms which were established by the native speakers are also adopted by non-native ones, like in Indian subcontinent. So during this stage, English may serve as a prestigious or functional language in education, administrations, and other domains, as Great Britain they did in Indian subcontinent. They introduced in education, where people learn English as a second language, and administrative affairs in courts, in law, and it was considered a prestigious language of Indian subcontinent that time. And at the third stage, that is nativization. English develops its own norms and linguistic features. Like today, we have Indian English, we have Pakistani English, we have Singaporean English. So now, features influenced by the local languages, culture, and context, because we have our own culture. India has its own culture. Bangladesh has its own culture. So because of these different cultures and local touch, they adopt their own vocabulary, their own pronunciation. So this stage involves emergence of distinct variety of English and unique linguistic characteristic, and it then transfer to a new variety of English. So in post-colonial English, in the first stage, it is introduced some historical process, trade, or colonization. In the second stage, it is used as a second language, as prestigious language. And third stage, it has its own unique vocabulary. And this process, this stage is known as nativization. Okay, and then you see that most people consider it as a native language of the people, right? Now, variation and diversity. The dynamic models acknowledges the wide range of linguistic variation observed in world Englishes, including differences in pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, and discourse pattern. So there we have variation in pronunciations, in vocabulary, in grammar, and discourse pattern. English varieties may exhibit both regional and social variation, reflecting the diverse socio-linguistic context in which they are spoken. Right? Because English is spoken in Pakistani culture. So we can see this variation in pronunciation. So you can't say that you are mispronouncing a word because it is pronounced differently in Great Britain, in America, or in Australia. No. If you are pronouncing differently, so this is one of the variation of English language that you are using in your own country. Nativization and localization. Nativization refers to the process by which English varieties develop their own linguistic norms and identities in non-native contexts. In non-native contexts, it develops words, right? That its own linguistic norms. For example, in Pakistan, that is non-native context, but it has its own linguistic norms. So this involves the incorporations of features from local languages and cultures, as well as the emergence of new linguistic norms and conventions. So there are so many vocabulary in English that we take from Urdu and we insert there. Okay, so there's the local touched English language. And then we have localization, refer to the adaptation of English to local linguistic and cultural context. This may involve the creation of hybrid linguistic form, code switching, and code mixing, as well as the development of specialized vocabulary and discourse pattern. So we nativize English, okay, first, and then we localized English. How it is nativized? Because it becomes nativized in non-native contexts. Our forefather, they use and then transfer to us, and we are using here then, because there might be people, children in Pakistan and India, that they might not know Hindi well, they might not know Urdu well than English. So then English become their native language in non-native contexts. This is nativization. And then there is a local touch, vocabulary, pronunciation and discourse pattern. Okay, it is taken, it is being borrowed from Urdu language, from Hindi language, from Bengali language, and then insert in English language. So contact and interference. The dynamic model recognizes the role of language, contact, and interference in shaping the development of world Englishes. English varieties may borrow lexical items, grammatical structures, and pronunciation features from local languages, leading to linguistic convergence and divergence. So this, because if you are acquiring English, so you have already in your hand a language, Urdu language, Hindi language, Malaysian language, okay, or Australian or Nigerian language, you have already in hand. So because of having already one language and you are acquiring English language, so they're in contact with each other. When they're in contact with each other, so you borrow some words from your own language and you insert in that language, in English language. So thank you so much. It was all about categorizing World English, and we categorize World English, and we talked about 3 labels, major labels, and we talked about World Englishes. And for World Englishes, we have a model which was developed by Kachru. Okay, and similarly we have another for New Englishes, we have a model which is strange model, and then we have dynamic model. Okay, you can see here that is for post-colonial Englishes. So for new Englishes we have strange model. For World Englishes, let me tell you here. Okay, for New Englishes we have strange model. Fine. For World Englishes we have Kachru's model, and for post-colonial English we have Shander model. So these are the 3 major models. Thank you so much. Please do provide your valuable comment in comment section.